Have you ever felt a sudden melancholy when autumn began to shed its leaves, or a sudden urge to reinvent yourself when spring announces its return? These emotions are not accidental, nor merely psychological. They are parts of an ancient call that Earth whispers quietly with each change of season. A deep invitation to remember that we, as humans, are not separated from nature. We are, in fact, its most intimate mirrors. The world around us is a living code, designed with cosmic precision to reflect the same processes that occur within our consciousness. There is a secret that spans the centuries, hidden in plain sight. The Earth's seasons are a sacred language that encodes the very evolution of the soul. Since the most ancient times, people around the globe have recognized that the seasons were not just meteorological phenomena, but spiritual gateways. For the Celts, each turning point of the year's wheel, be it solstice, equinox, or intermediate Sabbath, was celebrated as a key to passage between worlds. In ancient Egypt, the rise of the Nile during the summer was read as a blessing and rebirth. Among the Native Americans, each season carried a guardian spirit that instructed the clan on how to live in harmony with cosmic cycles. In all these traditions, nature was not something external, but a sacred mirror of the evolving human soul. This ancestral understanding has been gradually lost as modernity disconnected from natural time and began to live under the artificial dominion of linear time. But the Earth has not stopped speaking. Each autumn, it invites us to let go of what no longer serves us. Each winter, it envelops us in the quietude of introspection. In spring, it whispers about possible rebirths, and in summer, it invites us to the fullness of self-expression. Each season is like a living page of a spiritual codex, revealing archetypal lessons of the soul's journey. When we ignore them, we feel misalignment, anxiety, a sense of emptiness. But when we honor them, something magical begins to happen. Our external and internal life start to dance in sync. What we call time, days, months, years, is actually a circular narrative that reveals the spiral of inner growth. And in this rhythm that repeats but never in the same way, deep spiritual truths are hidden. The cold is not an enemy, it is an invitation to retreat. Heat is not mere pleasure, it is the activation of inner light. The fallen leaves are not the end, but a sign of necessary release. Everything speaks, everything teaches. Nature never rushes, but everything is accomplished. And perhaps, just perhaps, the reason for so many modern pains is precisely the forgetting of this silent language, which pulses around us all the time. To understand this code, it takes more than observation. It requires presence. The external winter can be experienced as an opportunity to quiet the mental storms and listen to what the heart truly desires. Spring is the time when what was gestated in the darkness begins to bloom. Summer expands, warms, and enhances. Autumn teaches the art of detachment, surrender, and the wisdom that comes with loss. Each of these phases not only happens outside, they happen within us. We are made of the same energy that moves the seasons. Entire civilizations have shaped their spirituality based on this understanding. The Celtic Druids, for example, celebrated the Imbolc Sabbath at the end of winter as the first breath of new life. For them, the earth had a spirit, and each season was the cycle of a living being that also pulsed within each person. The Egyptians, on the other hand, saw the rising of Sirius in the sky, coinciding with the flooding of the Nile, as a harbinger of spiritual ascension. In the Far East, the Taoist view of yin and yang also reveals the cycle of duality that balances throughout the seasons. Each culture had a way of symbolically reading the earth, and all, without exception, agreed on one point: nature is our original teacher. This ancient knowledge may have been discredited by modernity, but it is far from having disappeared. It is in the body, in intuition, in the inexplicable sensations that arise with each change in climate. It is in the archetype. Jung, the great Swiss psychoanalyst, spoke of the importance of seasonal archetypes for psychic health. According to him, the collective unconscious carries symbolic images that are triggered cyclically, guiding us on an inner journey that, when respected, leads to balance and expansion. In other words, the seasons are maps that point the way back home. What happens when we ignore this call? Misalignment. The feeling of running without direction, of living without purpose, of repeating the same cycles without learning. But when we awaken to this code, we start to sail with the wind, not against it. It's not about a change of belief, but a change of posture, recognizing that the earth, with its tides, moons, and seasons, is initiating us daily into a knowledge much older than any book, a knowledge that is etched into our skin, our bones, our heart. And it is at this point that the Christ consciousness begins to approach. Christ, as a universal archetype, represents the integration between spirit and matter, between heaven and earth, between the divine and the human. This elevated consciousness also moves in cycles. It does not emerge all at once. It sprouts, blossoms, matures, and dies within us, only to be reborn in an even purer form, just like the earth, just like the seasons. The inner Christ is seasonal. It needs the silence of winter for gestation, the hope of spring for germination, the fire of summer for expansion, and the wisdom of autumn for surrender. Upon understanding this, we stop fighting against the movements of life. We start to honor them. We begin to become part of the cosmic dance which, in fact, we never stopped being a part of. The question has never been whether the earth is teaching us something. The question is, are we listening? The call is being made with every changing wind, with every budding flower, with every falling leaf. The living codex of the earth is before us, waiting to be deciphered not with the mind, but with the soul. Are you ready to remember? There are moments in life when everything seems to intensify. Emotions surge, thoughts stir, and the sensation of internal transition becomes almost unbearable. Curiously, these moments often coincide with the solstices. It's not a coincidence. Ancient wisdom teaches us that the solstice, whether winter or summer, marks a gateway for profound spiritual transformation. They are not merely astronomical milestones, but mirrors of the soul's movement. On these days, when light and darkness reach their extremes, we are invited to look within and recognize where we are in our inner cycle. On the winter solstice, daylight reaches its lowest point. It's the longest night of the year. In symbolic terms, this is the time of the great night of the soul, a moment when we confront our inner darkness, fears, doubts, and forgotten parts of ourselves. Many experience it as depression, loneliness, or a sense of emptiness, but spiritually, it's a sacred time. It's when the seed of light begins to gestate. It is there, in the total absence of external shine, that the divine spark of inner rebirth is born. This cycle mirrors, with almost surgical precision, the birth of the inner Christ in the deepest part of the soul. Contrary to what the modern world would have us believe, darkness is not the villain. It is the womb, the place where everything is prepared, warmed, and transformed in the invisible. It is a time to retreat, to quieten, to reflect, and to listen to what the noise of everyday life does not allow us to perceive. Therefore, the winter solstice has always been celebrated with rituals of introspection, meditation, and silent communion with the mystery. Ancient peoples did not fear the dark, they revered it. They knew that without winter, there would be no spring. Just as there is no true expansion without first traversing the valley of spiritual contraction. On the other side of the wheel of the year, we find the summer solstice, the longest day when light reigns in its utmost brilliance. It is a time of revelation, of energetic climax, of the full expression of being. What was planted and nurtured in the dark finally reveals itself. Consciousness illuminates, gifts bloom, the soul shines. However, it is also the moment when the shadow can hide behind the light and the ego can feed off the illusion of dominance. Excessive sun blinds. Therefore, the summer solstice requires spiritual humility and conscious presence to avoid falling into the trap of self-exaltation. These two solstitial moments, seemingly opposites, are in fact complementary. They represent the two wings of the same soul, introspection and expression, withdrawal and expansion, shadow and light. There is no growth without both being present. In the authentic spiritual journey, it is not enough to seek light. It must be integrated with unresolved darkness, And the code is in the solstices. Every half year, the Earth reminds us that we are cyclical and that we need to die in certain parts so that others may be born. Ancient cultures understood this so deeply that they created entire monuments dedicated to the solstices. Stonehenge, for example, in England, was built with exact alignments to the sunrise on the summer solstice. Meanwhile, in Cusco, Peru, the Inti Raymi was celebrated by the Incas as the feast of the sun, not just a worship of the sun itself, but a reverence for the spiritual light it symbolized. In both cases, the focus was not just the sky, but what it awakened within the human being. This is where we begin to understand that solstices are not external events. They are living reflections of what happens in the inner temple of consciousness. The outer sun activates the inner sun, and this inner sun is the Christ consciousness, the divine spark that needs to be nurtured with silence, presence, and surrender in order to grow and illuminate the darkness of the ego. When we live the solstice with this awareness, it ceases to be just a date on the calendar and becomes a point of spiritual initiation, an opportunity to align our intentions with the grand cycle of creation. The Christian tradition, indeed, preserves this symbol without many realizing it. The birth of Jesus is celebrated at the end of December, precisely during the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. This is not by chance. He represents the light that is born in the middle of the night, the hope that breaks through the darkness of the world. Jesus as an archetype is not just a historical being, but the symbolic image of the rebirth of divine light within each human being. This birth does not occur just once. It is cyclical. It needs to happen every year, every day, every time we choose light over shadow, but without rejecting the shadow. Upon understanding this, we begin to experience the solstices in a completely new way, no longer as distant events, but as living rituals that can reconnect us with the soul. In winter, we can intentionally delve into our silence, let go of what is old, cultivate listening. In summer, we can expand our gifts, manifest our light, share with the world what the darkness has taught us. To live the solstices consciously is to allow the earth to guide us like a loving teacher along the path of self-realization. This integration of opposites is the very path of Christ consciousness. For Christ is not just light, he is the one who descends into darkness, confronts death, transforms pain, and then resurfaces with compassion and power. He does not reject the shadow, he embraces it, transfigures it, and guides it to the light. So too do we, when we honor our own internal solstices. When we allow ourselves to die to outdated versions of ourselves. When we choose to grow, even in pain. When we let the earth teach us how the spirit is reborn through cycles. Therefore, the next time the solstice approaches, notice what it awakens in you. What feelings emerge? What is being asked to die? What wishes to be born? Because the true temple is not only in the stone circles or the ancient altars, it's in the body, in the heart, and in the soul of the one who listens. The earth speaks, and the solstices are its deepest cries of awakening. And so, in the face of this dance between light and shadow that reveals itself at every turn of the year, the question remains: in which solstice is your soul right now? Are you ready to die or prepared to shine? There is a rare and powerful moment when day and night have exactly the same duration. A moment of cosmic balance where light and shadow dance in perfect equality. This phenomenon, known as the equinox, is not just an astronomical point on the calendar. It is a spiritual call to reconnect the human being with the principle of harmony. We often live, pulled by extremes. Either we lose ourselves in the intensity of the light, or we sink into the density of the shadow. The equinoxes remind us that the path of the soul is one of integration, and that only in the center is the true power revealed. The equinoxes occur twice a year, one in spring and another in autumn. Both are moments of profound transition, not only in nature, but also in our energetic and psychic field. The spring equinox symbolizes the resurgence of life, the blossoming of new cycles, the expansion of vital energy. On the other hand, the autumn equinox marks the harvest, the conclusion, the preparation for retreat. In the first, something within us wants to be born, In the second, something is ready to leave. And between both, there is an invisible axis, the axis of inner balance, the point of awareness where the soul breathes clearly. Spiritually, the equinox represents the moment when polarities face each other without conflict. There is no victory of light nor domination of shadow. There is mutual respect, recognition that both are parts of the same existence. This sacred moment offers us a rare opportunity to realign our lives with the center of our being. When we live out of balance, we tend to lean towards excess, of action or passivity, of speech or silence, of rationality or emotion. The equinox invites us to stop, breathe, and feel. Where am I going overboard? What within me needs to be balanced? In ancient traditions, equinoxes were celebrated with rites of passage and festivals that honored this point of balance. The Mayans, for example, built the pyramid of Chichen Itza with such precision that, during the equinox, the shadow of the temple forms the image of a sacred snake descending from the heavens. For them, this moment represented the union between the spiritual and terrestrial world. The ancient Persians, on the other hand, celebrated Nowruz, the spring equinox new year, as a time of spiritual renewal, cleansing, and rebirth. These people knew that the sky and the earth are not separate, and that every celestial movement is a mirror of the soul. In symbolic language, the equinox represents the 0 point, the space where polarities dissolve and pure presence emerges. It echoes the principle of Tao, where yin and yang coexist in harmony. On a deeper level, the equinox is not just an event in time, it is a state of consciousness, a stage in which the human being neither denies their light nor rejects their shadow, but unites them in one body, in one heart, in one spirit. It is in this state of union that the Christ consciousness begins to vibrate more powerfully. For Christ does not inhabit the extremes, he is born in the center. Interestingly, this center also manifests itself in the human body. The chakras, energy centers of our subtle system, have a balance point called Anahata, the heart chakra. It is exactly in the middle between the 3 lower chakras, linked to survival, pleasure, and power, and the 3 upper ones, related to intuition, wisdom, and transcendence. The heart is the equinox of the body. It is there that Christ's consciousness resides. It is there that balance becomes real. When we live at the extremes, we move away from this center and lose contact with the compass of the soul. But by returning to balance, we reconnect with the highest purpose of existence, to live with conscious love. Each equinox, then, is an opportunity to return to the heart. And this is not done just through meditation or ritual, though both help. It is accomplished through small daily choices, choosing silence when you feel like reacting, offering a listening ear where judgment was once given, allowing space for sadness instead of suppressing it. These small practices recreate the equinox within us. When we become equinoxial, we start to live with more lightness, clarity, and compassion. The energy balances out, and the soul blossoms. Furthermore, the equinoxes are also healing portals, because every imbalance creates disease, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. By honoring these moments, we are tuning our body with the codes of the earth. Nature shows us that everything has its time, a time to grow and a time to retreat, a time to speak and a time to be silent, a time to be born and a time to die. Imbalance arises when we try to force a rhythm that is not ours. But when we realign with the natural cycle, even the body begins to respond. There is more vitality, more serenity, more clarity. It's as if the universe is saying, "You've finally returned to the right pace." The Christ consciousness fully manifests when a human being learns to live in this rhythm, not as an effort, but as a listening. The inner Christ is the one who knows the right time to act and the right time to wait. It's the one who welcomes the light without exalting and embraces the shadow without getting lost. He is the balance in motion, and the equinoxes are living reminders of this silent mastery. They teach us that true spirituality is not in denying reality, but in harmonizing it. So the next time the equinox arrives, ask yourself, where is your center? What in your life is out of balance? What needs to be released so you can live in harmony with your essence? There is no need for grand ceremonies. A moment of silence is enough. A gesture of forgiveness, a thought of gratitude, a touch of presence. The code of harmony is within you. The earth simply reminds you. And if we listen carefully, we will realize that the equinoxes are not just celestial events. They are direct invitations from the soul for a reunion with wholeness. A return to the original state of unity, where duality is no longer war, but dance. Where conflict transforms into wisdom. Where we can finally rest in the center of being and say, "Here I am, whole, present, at peace." What if every emotion we feel, every phase we go through, every silence and every euphoria were simply reflections of internal seasons manifesting themselves? And what if, just as the earth revolves around the sun, our soul also orbits through sacred cycles of withdrawal, rebirth, expansion, and transformation? This is the language of the four faces of the soul: winter, spring, summer, and autumn that dwell within each human being. These are not just metaphors. They are profound spiritual realities that, when understood, can free us from the anxiety of having to be okay all the time. The winter of the soul is the quietest of all cycles. It's when everything seems to be stagnant, when motivation disappears, when the world loses a bit of color. At first glance, it may seem like a phase of emptiness or loss, but spiritually, it is a time of gestation. It is in the frozen silence of winter that the earth prepares the life that is to come. Likewise, it is during this time of retreat that the soul processes experiences, heals wounds, and comes into contact with its essence. In the internal winter, we are invited to slow down, contemplate, and regenerate. This is the phase where the ego dissolves and the spirit approaches with greater clarity. However, living in a society driven by constant productivity, many are afraid to enter this winter. They confuse introspection with weakness, withdrawal with failure. But the great spiritual paradox is that it is in this moment of inactivity that the greatest internal activations occur. The strength of winter lies in the invisible. The sap still flows through the roots, the heart still beats, the spirit is working in silence. When we allow ourselves to live this season unhurriedly, we find wisdom, depth, and serenity that no phase of euphoria gives us. Then comes the spring of the soul, and with it, the feeling that something awakens within. We are not exactly sure what it is, but we feel a slight enthusiasm emerging, a desire to start anew, to open windows, to breathe deeply. Spring is the time of the bud. It is still delicate, but it already brings clear signs of rebirth. In emotional terms, this inner season manifests when we begin to regain hope, when projects start making sense again, when the internal light begins to timidly shine once more. It is a phase of healing, lightness, and reorganization. In the spiritual spring, self-knowledge begins to blossom. The difficult experiences of winter become roots, and the soul strengthens to grow again. This is the time to replant intentions, to rewrite narratives, to seek new ways of being. But like every birth, spring requires care. It's not a time for rush. It's a time for subtlety. Like a flower that cannot be forced to open, the soul also needs its time to bloom. The steps need to be gentle, the decisions conscious. It is in this phase that the heart renews itself, and trust in the flow of life begins to be restored. Then comes the summer of the soul, the phase of expansion, achievement, and brilliance. This is the internal season where energy rises, where self-confidence solidifies, and projects take shape. We feel more vitality, more courage, more presence. Summer is the time of fruition. What was sown and cultivated begins to bear fruit. This is the phase where we show ourselves to the world, where we share our gifts, where the inner light is at its peak. It is also when relationships strengthen, bonds renew, and the connection with purpose manifests with greater clarity. But summer also brings a challenge, not to get lost in its own light. Joy and accomplishment can lead to excessive activity, vanity, and the need for control. Therefore, it is necessary to keep the heart humble and the mind serene. The energy of summer is powerful, but it needs to be guided with balance. When well lived, this internal season strengthens us with enthusiasm, generosity, and full presence. It is the time to express who we are without fear, to shine without dimming anyone, to love without measure. The Christ consciousness finds in this cycle a fertile ground to be expressed with authenticity and compassion. And so gently, the cycle leads us to the autumn of the soul, the phase of transition, wisdom, and detachment. Summer begins to wane, and we feel a subtle melancholy, a desire to slow down. Autumn is the time for inner harvest. What we have experienced in the previous months now calls for review, assimilation, and discernment. It's time to select what stays and what needs to be let go. The leaves of the tree fall not because they are weak, but because the cycle demands renewal. Likewise, we need to learn to release beliefs, habits, bonds, and stories that have already served their purpose. In the spiritual autumn, the soul matures. Lessons take shape. Awareness deepens. This is the phase where we look at what we've built and understand its true value. Often, it's also a time of losses, not as punishment, but as liberation. What is no longer useful dissolves. What is essential remains. It is in this movement of surrender that we prepare ourselves again for the silence of the coming winter, but now with more awareness. Autumn teaches us that letting go is not the end, it's the beginning. These four facets of the soul do not follow the Gregorian calendar. Each human being may be living a different season in their own time. One person may be in an external summer, but going through an internal winter. Another may be in full spring, while their body goes through a physical autumn. The key is to observe, feel, perceive, and honor the season that manifests itself, without comparison, without judgment, without haste. The body knows. The soul signals. Nature speaks through us. When we recognize and respect these cycles, we stop resisting the flow of life and start to navigate with it. This wisdom is ancestral and, at the same time, urgently needed for the present day. We live in a society that glorifies the eternal summer, relentless productivity, constant enthusiasm, compulsory optimism. But this is unsustainable. We need to reclaim the right to live through all the seasons of the soul. We need to acknowledge that there is power in retreat, beauty in silence, strength in detachment, and light in starting anew. Only then, the Christ consciousness can truly flourish within us, with deep roots, mindful leaves, full fruits, and well-lived cycles. And so, at this very moment, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what season is your soul living in right now? There is no right answer. There is only an invitation. Honor the cycle you inhabit. It is sacred. It is necessary. It is your path. There is a subtle, persistent, and loving force that transcends time, bodies, cultures, and dimensions. A vibration that has no religion, yet touches all authentic doctrines. A field of consciousness that carries the original plan of who we truly are, long before we forgot. This force is what is called Christ consciousness. And contrary to what many think, it is not limited to the historical figure of Jesus. It is a divine programming imprinted in the core of every human soul, like a seed waiting for the right conditions to germinate. When we talk about programming, we are not referring to something imposed or automatic, but to a map of spiritual activation encoded within the human being. Just as the acorn knows its destiny is to become an oak, the human soul carries within it the memory of its wholeness, of its sacred origin. This memory is not in the brain. It resonates in every cell, in every heartbeat, in every connection with the subtle. That's why, at certain moments in life, we have the sudden sensation of remembering something we've never read or studied. It's the Christ consciousness calling us back to the center, to the truth, to the light of being. This call is neither strident nor coercive. It is gentle, persistent, profound. Often it arises in the silence of the inner winter, in the emptiness of autumn, or in the spring's yearning for a new meaning. It manifests as a discomfort with superficiality, as a strong desire to understand reality beyond appearances, as an urge to serve, to love, to liberate oneself. The Christ consciousness pulses with the earth, for it is the offspring of the same sun that fuels the cycles of nature. And just as the seasons follow a rhythm, the Christ programming also activates in phases, in layers, in spirals of revelation. Each outer season carries with it an activation code for consciousness. Winter invites deep introspection, a perfect phase to awaken the contemplative aspect of the inner Christ. Spring activates the impulse for creation, the rebirth of the inner light. Summer enhances the manifestation of the Christic light in the world, and autumn calls for wisdom and detachment, symbols of the crucifixion of the ego. It's no coincidence that great spiritual masters, throughout history, went through intense phases of darkness, expansion, service, and renunciation. They were aligned with the same universal code that governs the cycles of the earth and the soul. For this programming to be activated within us, attention is required. Presence, silence. It is not an external practice that awakens it. Although meditation, prayer, contemplation, and reading can help, what truly activates it is surrendering to the inner truth. When we stop resisting what is, and accept living each phase of life deeply, without hurry, without illusion, the Christic field begins to shine, and with it comes true compassion, loving courage, the clarity that does not judge, but understands. The Christ consciousness is, above all, a state of being where love and wisdom walk together. This state is not reserved for a select few, quite the contrary. It is the natural destiny of every soul. Mystics from all traditions have pointed this out with different names. The inner Buddha, the Atman, the higher self, the Son of God, the heart of being. They all speak of the same essence, the part of us that has never separated from the source, but needs to be recognized and reactivated. The planet is changing, and with it, thousands of beings are being called, not by an external master, but by an inner code that is beginning to pulse with greater intensity. This code has its physical residence in the heart and its energetic throne in the pineal gland, the bridge between worlds, between the visible and the invisible, between the body and the spirit. When we begin to live in resonance with the Earth's cycles, this gland, once dormant, begins to activate. The pineal perceives the rhythm of sunlight, lunar phases, tides, and transmits this information to the soul. That's why true spirituality is not an escape from the world, but a deep immersion in life, in the senses, in nature, in the now. It is there that the Christic code begins to decipher itself. And then we understood that Jesus did not come only to save. He came to show a path of consciousness, of integration, of awakening. He went through all the internal seasons, the loneliness of the desert, winter, the beginning of miracles, spring, the revelation of his mission, summer, and the surrender on the cross, autumn. His cycle is the cycle of the awakened soul. His death and resurrection are symbols of the ego that dies and the divine light that is reborn. He did not ask for worship, but the repetition of his path. Do as I did, love as I loved. This is the code. Upon accessing the Christ consciousness programming, we also change our worldview. We stop seeing nature as a resource, others as a threat, life as a chance. We start to see everything as part of a large, living, intelligent, and sacred organism. Each falling leaf, each blowing wind, each ending cycle carries a message, an invitation to humility, to listening, to reconnection. The earth becomes a temple, the body becomes an altar, the heart, a priest. This is the cosmic call, and it is intensifying. With every climate change, every external collapse, every inner awakening, the code pulses stronger. It's not about religion, but consciousness. It's not about believing in something external, but remembering what is already inside. The Christic programming is a plan of love, and can only be accessed by those who are willing to love themselves, others, the planet, existence. And so, step by step, season after season, gesture by gesture, we are gradually getting closer to that from which we were never separated. We are recognizing ourselves as children of light, bearers of the spark, co-creators of the new world. The Christ consciousness is not a distant destination. It is the spring that wants to bloom in the heart of every human being. And now, the question is no longer, am I called? It's, are you ready to listen and respond? We live in a culture obsessed with linear progress. From childhood, we are taught to see time as a straight line. We are born, we grow, we achieve, we age, and we die. However, this view is a painful oversimplification of reality. Time, according to the wisest traditions of the earth, is not linear. It's spiraled. It doesn't just move forward. It spins, returns, dives, and rises. And it's precisely within this cyclical structure that the soul finds its true journey. We didn't come to this world to simply follow a straight line of events, but to evolve in ascending spirals, revisiting the same themes with greater depth and awareness. The wheel of life, represented in countless cultures, is the key to understanding this structure. In Tibetan Buddhism, it symbolizes the cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, not as punishment, but as the perfect stage for the soul to learn, adjust, refine, and ascend. The Celts drew their beliefs in circles, spirals, and natural mandalas. The Mayans developed calendars that not only measured time, but revealed spiritual codes of passage, activation, and reintegration. In all these visions, there is a common point. Life is a cyclical dance between what returns and what transforms. And this is the key to understanding why certain challenges repeat themselves. How many times have you found yourself facing the same type of relationship, the same internal conflict, the same emotional limitation, even after years of growth? This is not stagnation. This is a healing spiral. Spiraled time makes us revisit the same themes, not to punish us, but to offer us the chance to see with different eyes, feel with a different heart, act with a different consciousness. Time returns to refine us, not to imprison us. But only those who abandon haste and humbly submit to the process can understand this. The seasons of the year are perhaps the most evident example of the divine spiral. Each year we experience spring, summer, autumn, and winter, but no spring is the same as the one before. No winter brings exactly the same experiences. They are the same archetypes, but with new degrees of consciousness. This repetition with variation is the basis of evolution. And if we observe carefully, we will see that the same happens with us. We come across the same fears, the same desires, the same cycles, but each time with more light, with more wisdom, with more clarity about who we are. This understanding dissolves the modern anxiety of solving everything and achieving a definitive state of perfection. It teaches us that there is no arrival, there is deepening. The Christ consciousness, contrary to what many imagine, is not a finish line, but a continuous spiral of integration where light and shadow dance in increasing harmony. With each turn of the wheel, something new is revealed, something old is healed. This is the universal pattern. From the atom to the galaxy, from DNA to the solar system, everything moves in spirals, including us. In practical terms, living the spiraled time is learning to observe oneself. When an emotion returns, instead of thinking, I'm regressing, ask yourself, what does this return want to show me now? Perhaps before you reacted with fear, now you respond with maturity. Perhaps before you distanced yourself, now you choose to remain present. This is how the soul grows, not by escaping from cycles, but by diving into them with a new attitude. The spiral is not just movement, it is evolving consciousness. At the heart of this wisdom lies the recognition that the universe is intelligent and coherent, even in its repetitions. Nothing happens by chance. Each return carries a gift, even when it comes wrapped in pain. Nature does not make mistakes. Time does not fail. And when we accept this spiraling rhythm, something in us relaxes. We step out of the race of, I need to get there, and enter the flow of, I am exactly where I need to be. This shift changes everything, relationships, decisions, feelings, because we stop fighting against the cycle and start walking with it. Deep spirituality begins here, in the recognition of rhythm. Great spiritual masters understood this. Jesus lived the cycles with total surrender. He fasted, silenced, appeared, withdrew, returned, died, was reborn. His life was not a straight line, but a spiral of revelations. The same is seen in figures like Buddha, Krishna, Mary Magdalene, Teresa of Avila. All of them went through turns, dark nights, returns, and enlightenments. The spiraled time was the stage for each of their awakenings. And when we look at the world through these eyes, everything changes. A personal collapse can be seen as the winter of a cycle, an unexpected encounter, like an inner spring blooming. A failed project may, in fact, have been the autumn harvest of learning. Life ceases to be linear, cruel, and incomprehensible, and becomes a cosmic dance of precision and compassion. Even suffering gains new meaning. It is the alchemical fire of the spiral, burning what no longer serves to make room for the new. The Christ consciousness, in this view, is not something that settles all at once. It pulses, enters, withdraws, deepens, returns with more light. It is a living spiral within us. It is a frequency that rises in steps, like a golden spiral of consciousness. And the more we accept the returns as part of the plan, the more we open ourselves to the eternal present that renews with each cycle. Because the true time is not on the clock, but in the awakened heart. And here comes a transformative truth. Everything comes back, but nothing comes back the same. The cycle returns, but you are no longer the same. The sun rises again, but now you have wider eyes. The pain reappears, but now you have a more mature soul. The wheel turns, but now you understand your place in it. This is the wisdom of the spiral. Repetition is not failure, it's refinement. Therefore, the next time something old comes back, don't fight it. Welcome it. Ask, what is here to be refined? What does my spirit want to show me in this turn of the wheel? How can I respond with more love, more presence, more truth? Because in this way, step by step, turn after turn, we become masters of time and not its victims. The Earth experiences this every year, and it generously shows us the path of the spiral. The wheel turns, life dances, time breathes. Are you ready to dance with it? At every point in time, at every turn of the cycle, in every season of the year, there is an invisible presence that observes us, guides us, and whispers directions. Since ancient times, spiritual masters and ancestral cultures have realized that time is not neutral. It carries spirits, archetypal forces, intelligences that cannot be seen with the eyes, but can be felt in the soul. These are the guardians of time, symbolic and living representations of aspects of the divine that govern the seasons and their deeper meanings. They are silent masters who dwell within the cycles, waiting only for us to recognize them so that their wisdom can guide us. Each season is more than a natural movement. It is an energetic portal inhabited by an archetype, a presence that represents not only a phase of the year, but a stage of consciousness. These guardians are not distant mythical figures. They live within us, in the depths of the unconscious, waiting for the right moment to emerge. When we understand and invoke these archetypes, we access forgotten aspects of our spiritual identity. They return to us fragments of the soul lost over time, and help us cross the portals of transformation with more clarity and courage. Winter, for instance, is guarded by the architect of the silent soul, the spirit of withdrawal, of profound silence, of hidden wisdom. He doesn't speak much, but his presence is firm. He teaches us to sit in the darkness without fear, to listen to what moves when everything outside seems to be still. This guardian governs the time of spiritual gestation, where nothing appears to happen, but everything is being rebuilt invisibly. He reminds us that the apparent chaos is, in fact, the most sacred phase of regeneration. His gaze is serious but compassionate. He guides us when everything falls apart, whispering, "Just wait. You are being reborn." In spring, the guardian of renewal appears, young, vibrant, dreamy. He represents the energy of rebirth, of hope, of sacred innocence. His presence invites us to leave our inner cave and believe again. He blows winds of inspiration into the ears of those who had lost faith. He brings flowers to the weary heart and seeds of new ideas to restless minds. His teaching is simple, yet profound. Everything can bloom again, but only that which was accepted in winter blooms. He guides us to celebrate life, but with the roots of pain transformed into wisdom. Summer is governed by the guardian of living light, the archetype of full manifestation, of leadership with love, of enlightened action. He is the sun that shines through us, the flame that does not go out. He teaches us to embrace our light, not with arrogance, but with responsibility. His strength activates the gift, the creativity, the inner power. But he also warns, light without humility burns. Power without wisdom destroys. This guardian appears in times of harvest and expansion, encouraging us to share, express, and sustain the light we came to bring to the world. When the cycle leads us to autumn, it is the guardian of wise surrender who manifests, an ancient being, wrapped in golden hues and long gazes. He represents conscious detachment, spiritual maturity, the wisdom that knows everything passes, and that letting go is as necessary as planting. His teaching is gentle, yet firm. You cannot carry what needs to fall. He teaches us to let go, people, phases, masks, old versions of ourselves. He shows us the beauty of impermanence and lovingly prepares us for the coming winter. These guardians are not just symbolic. In deep spiritual traditions, they are invoked as real archetypal forces, capable of reconfiguring a person's energy field. Shamans call upon them in medicinal wheel rituals. Alchemists represent them in cards and symbols. Mystics recognize them as living presences in dreams and deep meditations. They appear when we are ready to grow, and their presence transforms ordinary life into something sacred. Time ceases to be a succession of hours and becomes a succession of initiations. Within the Christ consciousness, these guardians are seen as facets of the divine intelligence that dwells within us. Each one reflects a face of the inner Christ, the silent one who meditates in the desert, winter, the one who heals and calls disciples, spring, the one who preaches and loves in action, summer, and the one who gives everything on the cross with love, autumn. There is no season that Christ has not lived through. There is no archetype he has not integrated. Therefore, by honoring these guardians, we are also activating the original plan of fullness that was intended for us. These energies also manifest themselves in the body. Winter activates the kidneys and the bones, support structures. Spring energizes the liver and the eyes, vision and purification. Summer warms the heart and the blood, love and courage. Autumn governs the lungs and the intestine, the flow between inhaling and letting go. Nothing is by chance. The body is the temple where these archetypes live, breathe, circulate. When we listen to their signals, we rediscover our ability to heal ourselves deeply. Contact with the guardians of time also awakens dreams, visions, intuitions, and unexpected changes. They don't just gently enter one's life. Sometimes they come as a crisis, as a break, as a rupture. But those who understand their arrival know that everything is being aligned for a greater leap. They don't hand us comfort. They hand us truth, transformation, direction, and power. And perhaps you're wondering, how do I connect with these guardians? The answer is simple. Live each season of your life with presence. When winter comes, retreat. When spring arrives, restart. When summer shines, share. When autumn falls, let go. It is through conscious living that the guardians reveal themselves. It is in respecting the cycle that the master appears. There is no need for elaborate ritual, although they are beautiful. All that's required is the honesty of being open-hearted to what the season wants to teach. And the more we acknowledge them, the more we recognize ourselves, because each guardian that appears along the way reveals a forgotten piece of our own being. Winter shows our depth, spring, our hope, summer, our radiance, autumn, our wisdom. Each one is a mirror, a guide, a key to the next stage of the journey. Together, they form the circle of completeness, the living mandala of the soul. And so the question that remains is, which guardian is by your side at this moment, and are you ready to listen to him? There comes a point in the spiritual journey where understanding cycles is no longer enough. It is no longer sufficient to admire archetypes, observe seasons, or study patterns. A point where the seeker is called to live all of this fully, integrating the lessons in a visceral way. This moment is known among mystics as the time of convergence, when the human being begins to realize that everything is interconnected and that separation was just a temporary veil. The soul approaches the center of the mandala. The seeker becomes the path. The cycle becomes presence. So far, we've traversed internal seasons, deciphered the codes of the earth, felt the solstices and equinoxes, accessed the archetypal guardians of time, and started to hear the call of the Christ consciousness. Now it's time to weave all of this together, because these are not isolated experiences. They are threads that intertwine in the fabric of life, forming a sacred pattern that can only be understood when we look with the eyes of totality. The true initiation begins in integration. There is no complete awakening without unity, and this is where everything converges. The convergence of cycles is more than the sum of its parts. It is the sacred chemistry of the soul finding its coherence. It's when winter, spring, summer, and autumn cease to be merely phases and start to be recognized as living forces that coexist within us. An awakened being does not live one season at a time. They learn to carry them all simultaneously. The lightness of spring, the strength of summer, the wisdom of autumn, and the silence of winter live in the same heart, in the same breath, in the same present consciousness. This state of convergence is not theoretical. It completely transforms the way we live, feel, act, and choose. A being who lives in alignment with all cycles understands that there is no opposition between light and shadow, between expansion and withdrawal, between speaking and listening. They no longer fight with life, they dance with it. They no longer divide their time between what they like and what they reject, because they see in everything an opportunity for alignment with their own essence. Convergence also manifests energetic coherence. What was once fragmented begins to unify. Thoughts start to reflect the heart. The body aligns with the soul. Words resonate with actions. There are no more masks nor internal divisions. The soul begins to vibrate in resonance with the cosmos. And that's why, at this stage, many people start to experience profound synchronicities, spontaneous healings, unexpected encounters, revelations that seem like coincidence, but are actually the language of the universe expressing itself through alignment. In this state, Earth ceases to be a backdrop. It becomes a living organism in communion with its own consciousness. The trees speak, the stones whisper, the wind guides, not as literary figures but as vibrational reality. The seeker understands that he is not on Earth, he is with Earth, as Earth within Earth. The separation between human and planet dissolves, and a new type of relationship is born, of co-evolution, of co-creation, of reverence. This is where Christ consciousness blooms most powerfully, because Christ is not an isolated entity. He is the living intelligence of universal unity. At this point, spirituality begins to be experienced in everyday life. There is no longer a need to go to distant temples to feel God. He is in the touch, in the speech, in the food, in the silence. Each gesture becomes a ritual, each meeting sacred, each phase of life a teacher. The seeker becomes a walking temple, a channel of presence, a living witness to the union between heaven and earth. He stops seeking miracles and begins to recognize life as a miracle in itself. The sacred descends from the pedestal and settles on the ground where one steps with awareness. The convergence of cycles is also the key to true abundance, because a fragmented being is always struggling to achieve something. Meanwhile, the integrated being understands that it is already everything it needs to be, and therefore, it manifests. Abundance ceases to be an effort and becomes a natural consequence of a coherent field. The fruits come at the right time. Resources flow accurately. The right encounters happen synchronously. Not because there is control, but because there is alignment with the whole. This is the oldest secret of all esoteric, spiritual, and initiatory traditions. The universe responds to the vibrational state of the being. And the more integrated it is with the Earth's cycles, with the archetypes of the soul, and with the rhythms of light and shadow, the more naturally the universe manifests in your life as harmony, clarity, and purpose. It's not magic. It's spiritual physics. It's energetic coherence in action. And so, all the pain experienced in previous cycles begins to make sense. The losses reveal themselves as liberations, the ruptures as realignments, the winters as cosmic wombs, the summers as celebrations of the cultivated light. The soul looks back and recognizes, everything was part of it. Everything led me here. And by saying this, a new stage begins, that of full communion with the whole. Here, the soul stops resisting and starts participating in creation with awareness. It no longer waits for the world to change. It becomes the world and changes with it. At this point, many start to serve, not as an imposed mission, but as a natural overflow of those who have become a source. Love is no longer an ideal, it is a state of being. Wisdom is no longer accumulated, it is shared. Spirituality ceases to be identity. It transforms into living presence. Time ceases to be linear. It dissolves into the eternal now. The cycle no longer confines, it propels. The archetype no longer limits, it guides. Everything converts into consciousness. And perhaps you are feeling this right now. A desire to not only understand, but to deeply live all of this. To allow each season, each guardian, each spiral, each silence, each light, each shadow, to dwell within you with love. If this desire pulses, then you have already entered the field of convergence. You are already returning home. Because in the end, this is the great revelation. You don't need to transform into something you're not. You just need to remember who you've always been and align every part of your being with the totality of creation. For millennia, the Earth has silently guarded the secrets of human evolution. It not only sustains life, it programs it. With every season, every beat of its tectonic heart, every leaf that falls and is reborn, it imprints onto its living body the code of conscious transformation. We, as humans, have been forgetting this over the centuries, deluded by the fantasy of separation. But that time is ending. The Earth is already awakening, and with it, a new kind of humanity is emerging, not based on domination, but on integration, not on control, but on collaboration, not on ego, but on consciousness. This new humanity does not emerge through decrees, dogmas, or ideologies. It quietly sprouts like spring invading winter. It is born from within, in the hearts of those who listen. It does not announce itself with noise, but with coherence. One by one, human beings in all corners of the planet are remembering that they are living parts of an interconnected whole. They are realigning with natural cycles, listening to the internal guardians, reactivating the Christ consciousness, and assuming their co-authorship in the sacred dance of life. This is the legacy of Earth, not only to give us a body, but a purpose, not just a home, but a mirror, a constant reflection of what we can become when we live in communion with her. The planet is a living organism that holds the original instructions for the blossoming of the human soul. It is a wordless book, written in seasons, landscapes, and vibrations that can only be read by awakened hearts. And now, more than ever, this book is being opened, the instructions are being activated, and the question is no longer, are we capable? The question now is, are we ready to accept the responsibility of co-creating the new cycle? The new Earth is already pulsing at a higher vibration. Its waters, its skies, its winds, and its trees are reorganizing into a new energetic pattern. Many call this a planetary transition, others, a quantum leap for humanity. But names do not matter. What matters is that the planet is ascending in consciousness, and we are being called to actively participate in this elevation, not as spectators, but as conscious instruments of this transformation. And this requires action. No longer rootless action based on fear or obligation, but sacred action, coherent, rooted in presence and cyclical wisdom. The new humanity acts with the rhythm of the Earth. It plants when it's time to plant, harvests when it's time to harvest, becomes silent when it's time to listen, speaks when the word carries light. It's not about perfection, it's about attunement, about honoring the cycles of the soul and nature as a single field of life. In this new paradigm, spirituality and ecology cease to be separate themes. Because Earth is the body of incarnate spirituality, taking care of it is taking care of the soul, and caring for the soul is also healing the Earth. This awareness is already being born in thousands of hearts. Young people who abandon consumerism and seek meaning, elders who recover forgotten knowledge, awakened women and men who live in cycles, who plant their own medicines, who listen to the moons, who respect animals, who listen to their own body. They are the sowers of humanity's new season. And these sowers are everywhere, in silence, in prayer, in work, in communities, in cities, in deserts and forests. They know they did not come to repeat the old world, but to anchor a new era. They are not in a hurry. They know that the soul's spring cannot be forced. They know that the earth is the mother, the teacher, and the guardian of all codes. And for this reason, they walk with reverence. They touch the ground with respect. They honor pain as initiation. They celebrate joy as an offering. They live spirituality with bare feet on the ground and an open heart to the sky. The new humanity will be cyclical, communal, compassionate, and conscious. There will no longer be a separation between science and spirituality, between body and spirit, between work and purpose. There will be integration. There will be presence. There will be love in action. The economy will be based on care. Health will be understood as energetic balance. Education will be governed by the rhythms of the being. And spirituality will cease to be a belief. It will become a living, ancestral, and everyday practice. But this vision is not a distant dream. It is already being nurtured now, within you. Every choice made with presence, every food grown with intention, every word spoken with respect, every silence lived with wisdom. All of this is already building the foundations of the new collective cycle. The earth does not ask us for great deeds. It asks us for consistency, humility, and listening. It wants companions on the journey, not masters, conscious partners, not distracted dominators. It wants whole souls, not diluted fragments. Therefore now, look around you. What in your life is aligned with the cycles? What needs to be released? What calls for more presence? What is being born? What is dying? Because the new world is not built with theories. It flourishes from the living practice of those who have already understood that the earth is a temple, school, and mother all at once. And here is the climax. The Christ consciousness is the ripe fruit of the awakened earth. It is the flower of the tree of evolution. It is the fire that burns in the heart of those who remember, I am part of the whole. And this whole is love. It is life. It is breath. It is season. It is earth in its most divine and most human expression. We are not here to dominate the planet. We are here to complete its awakening cycle with our living consciousness. And in this call, there is no more time for ignorance, arrogance, or delay. It's time to choose. Will you choose to repeat the old cycle, or will you answer the earth's call and live as a soul aligned with its pulse? And now, Mind Unfettered. I want to invite you to leave a living record of this journey here in the comments. Which season is your soul living in right now? Are you in a time of gathering, of blossoming, of manifesting your light, or of letting go of what has already completed its cycle? Share with honesty. Perhaps your response is exactly the mirror that another brother or sister here needed to read. This exchange is more than conversation. It's a collective manifestation. It's code being activated together. And if all of this resonated with you, if something awakened, if the call touched you, then the next step of the journey is already waiting for you right now, here on the screen. Watch the Book of 33 Steps, the hidden map Jesus left for enlightenment, and discover the hidden steps that Jesus left for soul enlightenment, a direct and revealing continuation of what was started in this video. This is not about blind faith nor doctrine, but about vivid memory. A hidden map, accessible only to those who dare to see with the eyes of the Spirit. We are the mind unfettered, free souls, awakened minds, hearts on the rise, and this is our time, our cycle, our calling. I'll meet you at the next revelation.